Welcome to the Money Study Podcast with Jim Bishopp. In this podcast, we bring lessons on personal finance to life, helping you achieve the dignified retirement you deserve. Jim will guide you through practical financial strategies and tips to manage your money during your working life and through retirement. Now, on to the show.
Hello and welcome to the Money Study with Jim Bishopp. Jim, how are you today?
I am living the dream, Eric. How are you, man?
You're always living the dream, brother. I'm doing good. I'm doing good.
That's my deal, man.
If you're going to live life one way, that might be the way, right?
Yeah, you know, and I didn't say, Eric, whether that was a good dream or a bad dream. Sometimes the dream keeps me up in a cold sweat, but today it's a good one, man. Today it's good.
All right. Well, I know it's a really good one because you got a special guest in studio. Why don't you introduce the guest today?
I do. I have my younger brother, Steve, is on in here with us. He is one of our advisors. He's been with us for how long, Steve? 20?
Oh, since 1993. So however long that's been, long time.
That's too much math for the two of us to do. So, yeah,
long time.
Yeah, I'll give him a little bit of prop here. He's our number one or two guy, depending on how you evaluate that in terms of number of production, number of assets that he manages for folks, clients that he has, et cetera. So, real good asset. He also manages the training for a lot of our other advisors. So, he's really an integral part of our team.
Fantastic. All right. And I know today you guys are going to be talking about the benefits of working for a public employer. And obviously, it's an important subject for a lot of people out there. Yep. But why do you think an entire show needs to be dedicated to it?
Well, I think a lot of folks in the public sector really don't think much about their retirement benefits or really don't understand the value of them. And I think that's a real big miss, you know. So before I go too far, I just want to say everybody, I mean, it's just not debatable that everybody in the public sector, or most folks in the public sector, are not paid what they're worth, right? Teachers are not paid commensurate with their level of education,
correct,
responsibility. University folks, for the most part, aren't. Some researchers are paid better than others, but for the most part, university folks aren't. Public safety people, you know, are likely underpaid. So I get all that, and we understand it, we hear it, but I also think there's some huge benefits in the retirement programs that are available to those folks. And I think they're undervalued. One of the reasons I think they're overlooked is I hear, for example, I was talking to a superintendent friend of mine the other day, and he was telling me that he literally loses employees to public sector jobs over $1 an hour. The company that the employee goes to get a $1 an hour pay raise has no benefits, right? So the employee clearly doesn't understand what they're forsaking when they make that move. Research also says that, you know, folks aren't entering education curriculum, right? They're not going into the college of education to get a teaching degree. And I know retention and recruiting of employees in the public sector is hard. So at least in parts of it. So I just thought it would be really good to sort of help people understand what those benefits are worth and why they're so valuable.
Yeah, I'll tell you this, just on a side note, personal story here in our area, they are so desperate for substitute teachers because of everything that's going on. And again, it falls back to that undervalued, I believe, undervalued situation that they're actually allowing anyone basically living or breathing to sub. They need zero teaching credentials just to step into that role for a short amount of time, obviously, while we deal with this COVID issue and everything else. But I think there was an undervalue way before COVID ever hit.
There absolutely was. Any superintendent. Yeah, any superintendent would tell you that, right? They can't find people to fill those jobs.
Yeah,
and they don't want to stay either. A lot of the employed teachers look for other things and other opportunities because they feel undervalued and underappreciated. Yep.
Yeah, that's so unfortunate. That bothers me to no end. And again, it's a trickle, right? I mean, that's going to lead to less people, like you said, getting involved in education and wanting to be teachers. If they look at how the teachers are struggling now, why would I want to pay all that money for college education to then struggle for the rest of my life?
Right.
Absolutely.
Or think about law enforcement, those guys, right? I mean, in this environment where they're just, continually berated with, did you do it right? Didn't you do it right? Body cameras, and defund police. Who'd want to do that job, right? So I think all those folks are woefully underpaid.
Yeah, that's terrible. So what are you guys seeing in your area or what are you doing in your area to help transform this?
Well, I don't know. I think this podcast is really a big one because we really want people to understand what those benefits are worth, because I think if you factor that into the salary, then it becomes a lot more, closer to par with other folks, right? But
absolutely.
Yeah. Probably not getting there, but
so a lot of what we do is just education, and this is a step to it, right? I don't think they have a very firm understanding of what their benefits are worth to them. And when they walk away from a pension plan and that kind of thing for $1 an hour, what are they really leaving on the table? Part of our job is to make sure that they understand what they're leaving on the table.
Right?
Well, let's talk about that, right? So let's talk about pension specifically. You brought it up. How valuable is the pension as opposed to maybe a 401k, right? I mean, that's if they're going to the public sector, maybe their company is going to offer a 401k, but tell me what the difference between the value of a pension is and the value of any other retirement vehicle.
Well, the difference between a pension and a 401k really happens on the back end, right? So 401k, you're really going to be responsible for how the distributions of that pot of money come out and your retirement, right? So you have the ability to overspend it and to run it out of money well before your life expectancy is over. With a pension, it's going to be, generally speaking, it's going to be guaranteed for the rest of your life and possibly for the rest of your spouse's life, whichever one is longer. So there's a guaranteed stream of income with a true pension or a 401k. You can set it up to do that, but you are assuming all the risk. You're assuming the market risk, the overspending risk, the inflation risk, all this kind of stuff. So that's the major difference, in my opinion, between a pension and a 401k type of retirement plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you as a self-employed guy who's going to live on a pot of money, a 401k, it's a pot when I retire, that's what I have, and it's never going to be more. The thing that scares me the most is overspending it and running out of money before we run out of breath, as they like to say. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. Steve, sometimes people talk to us about what's the equivalent of it. Like I hear people come to my office and say things like, boy, I read in some article that I need $2 million before I retire, but really that doesn't apply very well to people with a pension, right?
Well, generally not, because the pension is worth some, and there's ways to kind of figure this out, some set amount of money down the road if we were going to compare it to a 401k, because we don't have to worry about it, right? So there's a lot of different factors that we need to take into that when we do the planning aspect of it. The distribution rate, cost of living rate,
life expectancy,
those kinds of things. So there are ways that Jim's going to talk about that talks about how we can say, if you have a $40,000, $50,000 pension when you retire, what is that kind of worth in the 401k world, if you will?
Yeah, or another way to think about that is how much money how many dollars would you have to give us today to manage and generate income from, to generate as much income as you'd get from the pension, right? So we just kind of cooked up a couple of examples for you, and I know it's a little beyond this show to get into too much math or too many specifics, but imagine that you had a $40,000 pension and that we assumed you could draw 4% a year off of that. Now, the 4% is totally hypothetical. You may be able to draw more or less, depends on your life expectancy, your risk tolerance. I mean, we're just making some numbers up. But at 4%, a $40,000 pension, you'd have to bring us nearly $1 million to generate that $40,000 pension if we were going to draw 4% off it a year. If we're going to draw 5% off it a year, you'd have to bring me $800,000. And if 6%, it'd be $666,000 that you'd have to bring us to generate that amount of money over time. And that doesn't even account for risks like timing risk. What happens if the day after you retire, the market crashes, right? Or what if we go through an extended bear market? So when people say to us, I need to have $2 million. Well, I say your pension's worth somewhere around $800 million, depending on who they are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the key things you hit on there is not market timing, but the timing of the market returns when you put the money into the account. So it's very important that if you were going to give me $1 million and you need a $40,000 distribution at 4%, that we actually get kind of lucky, right? We need the first few years of market returns to be very strong. There's a lot of math behind this, but basically the order of returns is almost as important as the average annual return, the order in which the returns happen, so that we can guarantee that we have enough money down the road.
With a pension, you never have to think about that, right? Pension rolls through the front door. Someone else is taking that risk. It's great. I kind of jokingly say I'd cut my left arm off and watch it bleed for a pension, that I didn't have to think about, So I don't know. That's
it's about as, in the state of Arizona, excuse me, the pensions that the Arizona State Retirement System, I always tell clients it's about as guaranteed as we can get, right? Social Security is fairly well guaranteed. We're assuming that the U.S. government's always going to fund it. And the state of Arizona is basically going to have to go bankrupt for you not to get your Arizona State Retirement System pension. Or we don't have those same, which basically is almost no risk. And you don't have that in a 401k type of situation.
Right.
Yeah.
So we really eliminate a lot of risk using a pension.
And Steve, you're without naming the employer or putting anybody out there, your wife works for a company that has a pension, right? A public sector institution. Why is that?
Correct. She's with the Arizona State Retirement System with the company she's with. And the reason she's with it is because I don't have a pension, right? So I'm a 401k guy or a SEP IRA type of guy because I'm self-employed. And it gives us some guarantees. I know that going into retirement that my family will have 3 quote unquote guaranteed retirements, her state pension and 2 Social Securities. So that gives me kind of a leg up as far as planning is concerned over him,
right?
For example, who doesn't have one of those.
Like a brother rubbing it in. That's great. Yeah. Jeez. Well, here's the thing is that now you got my mind spinning here, Steve, because let's say you and your wife had retired in January or February of 2020, right? What happened to your 401k in March? What happened to her pension in March, right?
Her pension was on Easy Street still, right?
Yeah.
It was still doing its thing.
And that's a huge thing, yeah.
My 401k was taking a hit. I mean, I was getting kicked in the rear end with my 401k. I mean,
or worse yet, 2000 financial crisis of 08, 09, right? What if you retired in 08 and promptly had a year and a half or more of
yeah, you lose a third of your money
right.
or maybe not that much, 20% of your money in a year. You do that a couple of years in a row, 2 bad years in a row, you've lost 40% plus your distribution rate.
This stuff is hypothetical about returns and how sequence of returns and all that kind of thing. So it's really important that you have a plan, right? One of my favorite quotes is from Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you might end up somewhere else. So have a plan, make sure we understand what those distributions look like and where it's coming from, because there's a lot of moving parts, and we could talk to you about those one-on-one. So, we're really talking in the abstract and in generalities, but all that stuff is pretty spot on.
Yeah. I would assume that most public employees have Social Security as well, right?
Yeah, most do. I think there's 15 states in the union where teachers and employees of public schools are not covered. Some public safety institutions have not adopted the necessary requirements to participate in the state retirement system. In Social Security. So you ought to be careful about understanding that and really knowing whether you have that. But by and large, most folks have that kind of Social Security record.
Yeah, I know from personal experience, my father-in-law works Border Patrol. He retired, but for 31 years, and he has no Social Security because they didn't contribute into Social Security. So I knew that there were some out there, but I just wasn't sure how wide. I had no idea that some teachers actually don't have Social Security as well, and that scares the snot out of me. I mean, quite honestly, because again, underpaid, undervalued, and then I don't want to say they only have their pension because we know the benefits of pension, but man, still that's a little concerning.
Yep. And you hit on public safety with your father-in-law on Border Patrol. A couple things, and it's a little beyond the scope of this thing, but I just want to point it out. There's a couple of sort of specific things for those public safety folks called GPO, government pension offset, and windfall elimination. So you probably ought to understand what those are if you're in public safety. We can help you with that, of course. So call us if you want to talk about that. So some of our folks are really good at the public safety conversation. But those are things you need to be aware of in the planning process. But, in summary, a lot of folks have a Social Security record and a state retirement record.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So Social Security, again, a huge benefit to a lot of families out there, and something that I would assume most Americans rely on. What else do we need to know about it when it comes to whether it's being paired up with 401k or if it's being paired up with a pension? What do we need to know?
Social Security's changed a lot over the last, 5 to 10 years. There used to be a lot of different, what's the word I'm looking for?
Claiming strategies?
Claiming strategies, right. But the Social Security smartened up and kind of eliminated that. But there's still claiming strategies, right? I mean, when do we want to start to take Social Security? And a lot of that depends on your personal situation, right? Pretty much every financial planning book article you're going to read says delay on Social Security. Get as close to 70 years old as you can, which I think in general is accurate, but it's not accurate for every individual person. If you're trying to get out early, you may need to take Social Security. Or if you happen to be married, maybe you take one Social Security, delay the others, those kinds of things. So there's lots of different ways that you can go about dealing with Social Security. And again, tooting our horn here, we have the software and stuff that we can run these numbers for you to tell you a couple of different Social Security claiming strategies that may work the best for you. So there's a lot of thought that should go into just not turning 62 and saying, give me my check, or turning 62 and saying, I'm waiting until 70 come hell or high water. there's a lot of different thought processes that need to go in there based off of pensions, other assets, those kinds of things.
Yeah. So for my wife and I, we'll probably both wait till 70, but we have some folks who maybe have medical conditions that would say, maybe 70 doesn't make as much sense. My life expectancy might be a little shorter depending on what's happening. Maybe filing a little earlier is better, or they don't have invested assets in some way that, could bridge them from their actual retirement. So some people even say to me, well, I can't retire. I'm not Social Security eligible. Well, you clearly can. You just can't draw on Social Security yet, right? So you can draw, you just have to live on some level of income and then kick the Social Security benefit in somewhere down the road. A lot of things to think about around how you claim, when you claim, what the best strategy for each individual or each family is. But again, we can help you think through that.
Yeah. And I know that when you go to the Social Security website, that you can actually see what you are eligible for, like right now, right? But that's in today's dollars. So I think it's a little misleading. People think, oh, okay, well, I see what my benefit is. But if you're 45, that benefits 20 to 25 years down the road.
Yeah.
That's not the same amount of dollars. And teachers have, Social Security. A lot of them have Social Security plus their pension. In your opinion, is that going to be enough?
Well, probably not. Let me just throw one more thing in there about Social Security. You can go to ssa.gov and you can set up you can set up an online account there, and you can pull down if you some estimates about what your retirement income might be at different ages. If you're coming to us to do financial planning, you probably ought to bring that with you. That's really helpful to us.
And they're pretty accurate too.
Yeah, they're
the Social Security estimates are pretty darn accurate.
The thing that will screw that up down the road if you're 45 is your income. If you have a big jump in income, your Social Security benefit might be a lot better, but we can help think through all of that. Yeah. Is it enough?
No.
Probably not, right? So while they're two unbelievable sources, they're probably not quite enough. For one thing, the state retirement system has no cost of living benefit in it, so it's not going up.
Really?
Despite the fact that goods and services, your cost of living is going up, your benefit's not going up. And in Arizona, at least, they say there's just not much likelihood of a cost of living increase down the road. Plus medical expenses, right?
So we kind of look at those two as in a perfect world, you got Social Security, you got your state pension in our world, Arizona, is your day-to-day living expenses, right? And so we need other assets to cover emergencies, right? Because we can't go tap into Social Security and say, the roof blew off the house, I need $10,000 to go fix it, right? Yeah. Or call the Arizona State Retirement System and say, hey, can I get a $10,000 advance? And it just doesn't happen. So we have to have a different pot of money to help us cover medical expenses, emergencies, unforeseen things, and maybe to really keep you in the lifestyle you want to live, whether that's travel or hobbies or what have you. Having another pot or two of money really makes a ton of sense, and I think is vitally important, especially for teachers.
Yeah. Again, having a plan, I think, is really important there. So, people will tell us what their goals are. We sort of organize those goals for planning purposes in terms of must-haves, right? What do I need to stay alive every month? And then what are their, maybe they want a wedding for one of their kids, or college education for a kid who hasn't yet graduated, or they want to travel for the first 10 years, right? I had one old boy who told me there's 3 stages of retirement: no-go, slow-go, and go-go, slow-go, and no-go. And so, in that go-go period, maybe they want to travel more and they want a little bit extra income. And so extra savings on top of those core income levels are what, we need to think about in terms of saving from other vehicles.
Yeah. This echoes things that you and I've talked about many times, Jim, as far as having a plan is probably the most important thing that anybody needs to do. Having these out there, that's great, but without the plan to make everything work together copacetically,
right,
I think it's kind of a lost cause.
Yeah. If you think about inflation of healthcare costs, I don't know what the numbers are now, but healthcare costs are inflating way faster than any other, than milk and bread, right? So I think somewhere there's got to be an end to that, or we might all be living under a bridge. Nobody will be able to afford healthcare, but we need to plan for that level of inflation on healthcare costs, into retirement.
Yeah. And you made a point, you said, having additional retirement savings is obviously very, very important, but I'm thinking about folks out there, teachers, specifically, they spend a lot of their own money helping their classroom. They invest back into their kids, which is a beautiful thing to do. Yeah. What ideas do you have for people to help them create these extra savings?
So extra retirement savings. So, those extra expenditures that they want to spend while they're working really have to come from current income. So they have to sort of figure that out. But in terms of saving for retirement, people in the public sector have really specific kinds of savings opportunities. And this is where we got to be a little careful because we can speak in gibberish and financial tongue, right? But there's 403B, 457, non-qualified deferred compensation. Depends on who you work for, what they are. But they're supplemental retirement accounts. The things they have in common are that they are generally employer sponsored. So you can payroll deduct an amount that you want and invest it in a retirement account that is now a pot of money, not a pension. Right. So it's
important to make the note, too, that you can payroll deduct the amount you want 90% of the time, if not higher. There's no employer match. So it's not a 401k. The employer match is usually going to the Arizona State Retirement System, to the state pension. Right.
So it's your money. We call it elective deferral. Again, financial gibberish, but it means that I elected as the employee to defer that money and put it somewhere. And the employer then gives you the ability to select from some. Maybe it's just one, maybe there's 3 or 4 different investment type accounts or retirement plan providers that then you can use in retirement in some way. Most of those are tax advantaged. Some of them are traditional. Some might be Roth. We can talk more about what that all means down the road, but they're really great opportunities for you to defer those from your salary. And payroll deduction is a lot easier for most people, right?
Oh, payroll deduction just puts it on autopilot, right? You don't have to sit down and say, oh yeah, I was supposed to put $100 into this account this month and write a check or go to the, online and have them auto do it. Payroll will just take it directly out of your check, stick it into the investment account. The other good thing is most of the time, if it's a traditional one, we're reducing your taxable income dollar for dollar. So if you make $30,000 a year, you put in $2,000, your W-2 form at the end of the year is saying you made $28,000. So there's no special tax accounting that has to come with it. You don't have to take a bunch of papers to your CPA or any of that kind of thing. And the autopilot, I find with clients, once they get started and after the first few go in, they kind of forget it's even happening. It's just kind of like their health insurance coming out of their check. It's automatic and they don't have to think about it.
Another super great strategy is if an employee says, look, I'm going to put X number of dollars away. Maybe I'm going to put $100 a paycheck away right now. If they just incrementally increase that every year, it's monumental in the amount of money they have accumulated down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll full disclosure to the audience. I'm the guy that would have to have it come out of my check automatically. If I don't see it, no problem, right? I mean, if I don't see it, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
Steve, I think you said it, the first couple months, maybe I feel it a little bit, right? I'm like, I had, and then gone. I forget about it. I've got other things to do. I'm not paying attention. And then all of a sudden, oh, okay, that was a really good idea because I would have blown that $100 on Mountain Dew and, donuts or something. I don't know,
It takes no time, man.
Yeah, exactly right. And that's what I love about it. It's just, it's easy. It's no thought. Once it's set up, it's no thought. It's just done.
Yeah.
And makes it easier for clients.
Absolutely.
I'll tease one of our future shows, though. We're going to do a series on budgeting and management of your money, and that kind of plays into it. If we have these pots of money that are just automatically funded, then it's really easy for me to do that. For example, my wife and I, we have retirement accounts. So money goes straight through payroll deduction in our retirement accounts, and then we run 3 little accounts. We have a household spending account. That's where our bills come out of. She has her spending account. I have my spending account. When those 2 spending accounts are flat each month, we're done spending. And we're
full disclosure. I know her spending account's bigger than his.
As it should be, gentlemen. As it should be. I'm just saying. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. What are some other benefits that we need to be considering? I mean,
go ahead. For most people in the public sector, there's retiree health insurance. That is monumentally big, right? Because it doesn't matter what your health conditions are, et cetera, you can buy health insurance. That scares the pants off me as a self-employed guy too. Hopefully my health is good, but if it's not, I might have a hard time buying it, or it might be really, really expensive. There's even some subsidies, right? In some cases.
Yeah, I know that if you stay in the state of Arizona, and I think it's with most states, that they will actually subsidize a portion up to about, I think in Arizona, $250 a month to help pay for your retirement health care.
Right.
And so it goes, they just pay it right direct back to you. And it makes it a little bit cheaper still. Before does that, I can't remember, does that happen after you kick into Medicare or not?
It does. Yep.
Yes. So it's lifetime.
Right. And just in full disclosure, in Arizona, that's predicated on a couple things. Whether the amount you get is predicated on how long you were employed by a participating institution like a school district, and whether you're married or not. But so the longer you stay, the more money you get. If you're married, you get a little more money towards that. But they're helping you to pay for your health insurance. That's huge. There's also long-term disability. While I'm employed there, the state of Arizona, if I'm employed by the state retirement system and a state retirement system employer, there's long-term disability. If I get disabled on the job, after 6 months, I get two-thirds of my income till I'm Medicare age or retirement age.
Wow.
It's huge.
Doesn't cost you anything.
Right. It doesn't. Well, it's built into the payroll deduction stuff, but there's no direct cost. So it's part of what your state retirement contribution goes to that. But for me, I got to buy that on my own, and I'm just telling you, it ain't free.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right.
Yep.
Like I said, we're low on time, guys. Absolutely. What are your final thoughts?
I guess the main takeaway for me is that, while your paycheck may not be what you think it should be, and frankly, it's not what it should be for most of you, retirement benefits are really big. So there's a really good benefit in thinking about staying in or entering the, public sector and staying in there. If you're thinking about leaving, you got to be really careful about that. Make sure you're considering all of those different sources of benefit when comparing that to a private sector job. So just a lot to think about there. Obviously, we're here to help. We can help you understand that or think about what those takeaways are, what you're giving up, what you're leaving on the table if you're going to do that. But I think it's really important stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim and Steve, thank you so much for your time. Steve, great job, man. Your first podcast. It was a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. It was fun.
You bet. And of course, the last thank you goes to you, the listening audience. Thank you for tuning in and listening to the Money Study Podcast with Jim Bishopp. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This way, when Jim comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This makes it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And this is a great one, especially if you know teachers or anybody in public service that needs to hear this. It doesn't get more important than this to plan out what's going to happen for the future. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at SJI Financial Services Incorporated, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Money Study Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the speaker and/or the guest and may not necessarily reflect those held by Voya Financial Advisors. Comments concerning the past performance of monetary instruments, investment indexes, or international markets are not intended to be forward-looking and should not be viewed as an indication of future results. Investment advisor representative and registered representative of and securities and investment advisory services offered through Voya Financial Advisors, Inc., member SIPC. SJI Financial is not a subsidiary of nor controlled by Voya Financial Advisors.